We're here today with Phil Sturm, the instructor for IMC 613, Brand Equity Management. Phil, I'm looking forward to talking with you about the course today, and welcome.
Well, thank you very much.
So to kick us off, could you please tell us your background that prepared you to teach the IMC 613 Brand Equity Management course in the WVU IMC program?
Okay, Chad, I'm a senior citizen, so I have a pretty significant background, but I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. In anticipation of this question, I looked back to my history, and somewhere along the way, and I really can't identify what it was, something got me excited about brand management as an undergraduate student. And I can't remember what tripped my trigger, but I got excited about it. And I got my MBA straight after my BS degree. I went to Procter & Gamble. Now, P&G is the premier brand, or it was back in the 70s, the premier brand management company. In fact, they invented brand management as a theory of process back in the 1930s. So somewhere along the way, I said, not only am I going to go into brand management, but I'm going to go to P&G. Well, P&G didn't come to my campus. I was at a small college in North Carolina. And once I got my job, I learned that they did almost all the recruiting at the Ivy League schools and a few other premier colleges. I was an anomaly at all, especially since I had a Southern accent. That just was not consistent with P&G at all. But I got in. It was a good experience. What was real nice, I didn't realize it, when you first go into employment after MBA, you think you're going to be there forever, but you're not. So when I moved around, having P&G on my resume was a real asset. It impressed future employers, as well as I went into consulting, and that helped impress some clients as well. For about 25 years, I was in brand management, a combination of working for corporations and doing consulting work. I can't remember all the brands I worked for. I'm going to guess that is about 75. Women's hosiery, cigarettes, soft drinks, detergents, packaged foods, the list goes on and on. And there's two things I really learned here. Number one, there's some basic rules of brand management that applies everywhere. And we teach that in our 613 class. But also, if you're going to be good at brand management, there's something unique about your industry or your brand. You need to discover that. And maybe we can't teach that in the class, but the students will learn it through research, what's unique about the brands they're analyzing. So it's a combination of general rules and being very specific about your particular product. Near the end of my tenure in brand management, I was invited to teach at a couple of colleges. You don't get paid a lot when you've got an MBA and you're teaching part-time, but I did it kind of as a community service. I did not expect this, but I really loved the experience, to the point that I made a major career change midlife. I left brand management and went into academia. I got a scholarship at Virginia Commonwealth University to do my PhD. I was a student for a couple of years. Then I headed into full-time college teaching. I was a generalist, for 5 or 10 years, doing everything the college wanted: marketing and management, online or face-to-face, in Europe, in the USA. Whatever the college wanted, that's what I was doing. But I gained some seniority. I was able to move into a specialty, and I fell back to what I really love, is brand management. That's where I'm at today. I've developed the courses, the brand management courses, for 3 different universities. I'm the primary teacher for that class at those 3 universities, and it was a good decision to make, to move away from brand management into academia. Chad, I'm not moving away from the rat race. The rats are just a little bit slower over here, but I enjoy the process of academia. One thing I found, I keep doing this as I teach. I think back about great leaders I had, mentors, maybe even colleagues that really helped me along the way. And I had a few that didn't give me good experiences as well. And I constantly think about that. What did I learn? What can I apply to help my students get excited about this topic and learn about this topic? So that's really where I'm at. My biggest reward, and I don't get this every day, every term, but every once in a while, a student will say, I learned something this week in our class, and I was actually able to apply it at my work this week too. That's really what I like. I don't want to apply a lot of theory. I want to bring some things to the students that they can really take to the workplace immediately. So there's my background.
Well, that's great. And it's great that you found a way to be, to really enjoy both brand management and then higher education and be able to work with young people. So let's think a little bit specifically about the IMC 613 Brand Equity Management course. It's a core course in the IMC program. So all of the master's students that are pursuing an integrated marketing communications master's degree at WVU will take this course as part of their degree completion. What do you think, or what do you like most about teaching this course? What is your favorite thing about it?
I'll be honest, and this is kind of just my personal situation. I really didn't belong with P&G. That they didn't recruit me. I had to go after them. But managing a brand is somewhat egotistical. It's an ego thing. If you're successful, it's almost like a war. You're competing with all those other brands out there. Find out what your strengths are. Find out what their weaknesses are. Take it seriously. And I try to encourage my students to be serious about this. Don't be casual. This represents the bottom line to your corporation. And I want people to get excited about the battle. That's really the essence of brand management, excitement about the battle.
That's great. So tell us more about the structure of IMC 613. How is it organized, and what's involved with the written assignments in the course? Okay.
I've been teaching the class for 11 years, so I know everything that works and everything that doesn't work. So the class is pretty well structured. Now, I'm really happy with it. I get a note each term. You send it out saying, hey, how can we improve the class? And I'm hard pressed to improve it because I've already put in some new material just in the last term or two. So the class is pretty much up to date. 8 weeks long, 6 written assignments, 6 weekly discussions that change each week. Pretty traditional for our program. The key item in this course is called the brand audit. And the brand audit is just what it says. It's the auditing of a brand. The student gets to select the brand, and that's key. I'll mention that in a moment. And in this audit, it is a fairly comprehensive document. In fact, I've had some students call this a baby capstone or a mini capstone. It's not as big as the capstone project, but it's nice. It kind of prepares you for the capstone. It's a very deep analysis of a single brand. It's 4 parts. Number 1, we look at the industry. How does our audited brand compare to an industry leader? Points of parity and points of differences. Number 2, internal. How has the brand over the last few years been managing this brand? What are the, how do we approach the logo and the slogan and other graphics? What about the marketing mix, the product line, the pricing strategy, the distribution strategy, the communication strategy? We look at how the brand has been managed internally. Number 3 is external. We look at to see what the consumer is saying. And the consumer, the internet is generous. It gives us a lot of information. So if we dig deep, we can find out what consumers are saying, good and bad, about our brand. The 4th part is probably the most challenging of the 4 parts. This is the recommendations. We look for what we've learned in the first 3 parts and try to make recommendations of what the brand should be doing over the next 2 or 3 years. It's a pretty large project. I'd say the average is 25 to 35 pages. Excuse me. I've had a couple go up to 80. I don't encourage that. It's a lot of grading on my part, but those are unique and they ask for special permission to do it like that. But the typical is 25 to 35. And here's the good thing about the project. You're not sitting out there by yourself doing the project. 4 out of the 6 weekly assignments relate to the brand audit. We're doing different parts each week. We're building the audit over a 4-week period. Also, 3 of the 6 are about the brand audit. So your classmates are aware of what you're studying. They're giving you ideas. They actually will do some research on your behalf. So you're not out there by yourself. Of course, I'm giving support as well. So you're not out there by yourself. It's a big project, but it's a manageable project because we've spread it out over really a 4-week period.
Great. So when students are planning their schedule or for upcoming courses, they'll often ask about the workload of the course so they can prepare and balance their graduate studies with all of life's other responsibilities. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least intense and 5 being the most intense, how would you rate the IMC 613 Brand Equity Management course? And then why did you give it that intensity rating?
Okay. I'm going to give it a grade of 4. It's not deeply intense like the capstone. I think I'm perceiving the capstone to be a 5. And I don't think it's average. I see student reviews each term, so I have some feedback. We're asking for a lot of research, but we have it managed. It's spread out over the time. It's a very workable process, but because it's a significant process, significant document with a lot of research, I think I would grade it as a 4 rather than a 3.
Great. So what clues can you offer that would help students be successful in the course?
Good question. First of all, here's one that's not required. You're not required to have brand management experience coming into this course. Every student brings skills to be a professional buyer. They've been a consumer for 20 or more years. And that really is what I want them to draw from initially. What turned you on about a particular brand? Because you selected some brands to excel and you selected some to fail. So why did you buy it? Because of price, product selection, product quality, word of mouth. There's a lot of reasons why you picked brand A instead of brand B. Now this is just your personal experiences, but that's a good foundation to use for this course. There's probably 2 areas that I would suggest are ideal for this course, and this probably is applicable to a lot of other IMC courses. Number 1 is time management. Don't treat this as just something I'm going to do when I'm through with my job and my family and my recreation. You need to manage, you need to set X number of time aside, almost on a daily basis. One thing I would encourage is in your written documents, don't try to have it ready at 11:55 on Monday night. Try to manage your time and get it ready early. Try to, shoot for Saturday or Sunday. Let it sit there, and so you can come back later and edit it and really add the quality at that point. Number 2, I would encourage a hunger for knowledge. Enjoy the research process. One thing I would like to encourage, put a note on your computer. I'm going to read something every day, something new every day. Find an article to read every day. One thing I would suggest is that a lot of times if you go to the brand to get information, it may not be the best quality of information. Brands have a tendency, and I did this when I worked for the brands, they have a tendency to mislead or to minimize negative issues. So don't trust the information from the brand as being gospel. Look for second and third sources to prove your information.
That's great. So Phil, you've been teaching IMC 613 for, well, you said 11 years, since spring of 2010. Can you share your personal views on how brand management has evolved since you started working for brands?
Yeah, Jan, I'll be glad to. I'll go back a lot more than just the last 10 years. I'll go back the last 20 or 30 or 40 years. Brand management has evolved quite a bit. When I first started at Procter & Gamble, and this isn't an indictment of P&G, I saw this at other companies as well. We did not respect the retailer. We manipulated the retailer. We abused our relationship. But that has changed. Retailers are much bigger. They recognize the value of their space. They don't give it away anymore. They rent it out. Trade allowances are a big part of their business these days. So domination relationship with the retailer is now a partnership. Also, keep in mind, um, retailers have a lot of private label brands. So they're a partner getting our product sold, but they're also a competitor. It's an interesting dynamic that we have to deal with there. So our relationship with the retailer has changed. Our relationship with the consumer has changed too. We used to dominate the consumer. We made a product and we said, hey, consumer, here's what we got. We need to make you change your mind and like what we've got. We don't perceive that anymore. We try to understand the consumer. Research has become much more important. We study the consumer. We find out their wants and needs, and then we change our product to meet those needs. Also, the internet has changed the consumer a great deal. They have access to a lot of information that they didn't have prior to the mid-90s. They can reach out and touch a lot of our other consumers to a positive or a negative issue. So our relationship with the consumer has changed quite a bit. We respect them a lot more than we did 30, 40, 50 years ago. The internet I mentioned has changed a great deal. Our communication process is different. Print and radio was key back in the 70s and 80s. Those are minor vehicles today. Social media didn't exist until the late 90s, but now it's in most brands, that's number one on your media plan. We used to be national, now we're global because the internet goes around the world. The development of the brands is much faster these days. Home-based businesses are much more prevalent, so the organization of brand management can be dispersed over 100 locations instead of just one central office. There's more services being developed today. Products were critical in the 70s and 80s, but services become more important these days. And one thing I've seen, and you've probably seen this too, is women in our graduate program. I've seen more women in leadership roles in brand management today than 20, 30 years ago. And part of this is because women are more aggressive about getting their graduate degrees, much more so than males. So we're partly at blame for getting more females into brand management.
That's great. So what do you think defines you as an instructor?
Oh boy, interesting. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I'll throw a few jokes out there. In fact, I encourage him to call me Dr. Phil instead of Dr. Sturm or so forth. I try to be somewhat casual. I'll find some humor. I collect a lot of information. And so when a certain topic is brought up, I'll post a video that brings some humor into that particular topic. So I'm not cut and dry. I like to add some humor along the way.
That's great. So what has been your favorite aspect of teaching in WVU's online marketing communications graduate program?
Okay. This is going, I'm going to be honest here, Chad.
Sure.
I teach for 3 universities. I hope the other universities don't see this, but you have done a better job of recruiting challenging students than the others have. These students bring more questions to me than I see at my other 2 colleges. And partly I'm here to learn. I don't mean to say I'm ignorant, but I'll learn from every class. Students will expose me to things that I've never been exposed to. And I want to learn. And I learn more from the IMC program than I do from my other 2 colleges.
That's great. I do think our students are tremendous, and a lot of it's because many of them are mid-career, and so they come to the classroom with a foundation already. So and I'd say, I mean, every program has positives and challenges, but I think ours is very interesting and attracts a very good group of students. So the last question I have is really an open-ended one. What additional advice or thoughts do you have that you'd like to share with students that are considering or preparing to take this course? And also, what didn't I ask that you'd like to talk about?
No, you've covered the
the gauntlet of everything we wanted to address here. I do have one other nugget of knowledge, one advice that I want to give to my students. And I say this in class, but invariably I have 2 or 3 say, no, I'm going to go a different way. When you select a brand for your brand audit, and it's totally up to you, when you select your brand, I really encourage you to pick a large brand, a brand that's been around for 10 or 20 or 30 years, a brand that has a good history of information in the literature. If you pick a new brand, an obscure brand, a small industry, you're really going to be challenged to find good literature background information. It really makes the auditing process much more difficult. I don't want it to be that difficult, so I really encourage students to move away from those small, obscure new brands that they may be intrigued in, and take the basic brand. That'll make the auditing process a lot easier.
Great advice. Well, thank you very much for sharing your insight and experience on IMC 613, and really appreciate your time, Phil.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you invited me to do the interview.